What would you do if the person you trusted most was secretly planning your destruction tonight? You'll hear the chilling story of Amanda Sterling, a woman who walked into what she thought was a charity gala, only to discover her husband marrying someone else. What followed was betrayal, poisoning, lies, and a fight for survival that feels stranger than fiction. Stay with us until the very end. You won't believe the twists waiting ahead. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, share this video with friends, and of course, subscribe so you never miss the next tale. The champagne glasses clinked like tiny bells throughout the elegant ballroom at Riverside Manor, their crystal notes mixing with soft classical music from the string quartet positioned near the flower-draped altar. Amanda Sterling stood frozen in the doorway, one hand instinctively protecting her 7-month pregnant belly, staring at a scene that made absolutely no sense. White roses cascaded from towering arrangements. Ivory silk draped every surface. 200 guests in designer clothing mingled beneath glittering chandeliers. And at the center of it all stood her husband of 15 years, Richard Sterling, in a charcoal gray tuxedo, his arm wrapped around a woman in a flowing white wedding gown. "This can't be right," Amanda whispered, her voice lost in the celebration around her. The invitation in her purse clearly stated this was the Henderson Foundation Charity Gala. She had specifically chosen her navy blue maternity dress for a fundraising event, not a wedding. The bride turned, and Amanda's world tilted sideways. Brianna Hayes, Richard's 26-year-old assistant, beamed with happiness, her professionally styled blonde hair gleaming under the chandelier light. The same woman who had been answering Richard's phone calls and organizing his schedule for the past 2 years. "Oh my God!" Brianna shrieked, her voice carrying across the ballroom with unmistakable recognition. "She's here. You promised me she wouldn't find out until we were already married." The room seemed to spin as Amanda tried to process what she was seeing. Richard's face went pale when he spotted her, his usual confident smile faltering for just a moment before snapping back into place. But Amanda caught that flash of panic, that split second when his mask slipped. "Amanda, sweetheart," Richard called out, striding toward her with the same charming authority he used in his business meetings. "You look confused. Are you feeling all right? Maybe the pregnancy is making you disoriented." The concerned husband act was perfect, just like always. His voice carried that gentle, slightly patronizing tone he had been using more and more lately whenever Amanda questioned anything or expressed confusion about her increasingly foggy memory. "Richard, what is this?" Amanda's voice cracked as she gestured toward the wedding decorations, the altar, the obvious ceremony that had just taken place. "The invitation said Charity Gala. You told me it was the Henderson Foundation fundraiser." "Honey, I think you're having one of those pregnancy moments," Richard said, reaching for her arm with practiced concern. "Dr. Martinez warned us about confusion and memory issues in the 3rd trimester. Remember, you've been having more and more of these episodes lately." But Amanda knew what she was seeing. The wedding cake decorated with sugar flowers, the photographer capturing candid moments of celebration, the bride's veil still pinned perfectly in place. This wasn't confusion or pregnancy brain fog. This was betrayal on a scale she couldn't have imagined. "Call 911, she heard someone shout from across the room as her knees buckled. The elegant ballroom tilted sideways, the crystal chandeliers becoming streaks of light as Amanda collapsed onto the polished marble floor. Her last clear thought before losing consciousness was the sound of Brianna's voice, sharp with irritation rather than concern. "This is supposed to be our day. Why is she even here?" The antiseptic smell of Hartford Hospital hit Amanda before she opened her eyes. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the steady beep of monitors created a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. Her mouth felt dry, cotton mouth that seemed to go deeper than simple dehydration. Mrs. Sterling. A warm voice drew her attention to a woman in scrubs standing beside the bed. I'm Dr. Sarah Collins. You collapsed at an event and were brought here by ambulance. How are you feeling? Amanda tried to sit up, her hand moving instinctively to her pregnant belly. The baby is the baby, okay? Your baby's heartbeat is strong and steady. Dr. Collins assured her, consulting a tablet. All the fetal monitoring looks normal, but I need to ask you some questions about what happened today. The memories came flooding back. The wedding that wasn't supposed to be a wedding, Richard in a tuxedo, standing beside Brianna in white. The champagne, the flowers, the guests celebrating while Amanda stood there like an uninvited intruder in her own life. Where's my husband? Amanda asked, though part of her already knew the answer would hurt. Dr. Collins hesitated. He left about an hour ago. Said he had urgent business matters to handle and would check on you later. Of course he did. While Amanda was being treated for a medical emergency that happened at his secret wedding, Richard was probably managing damage control with his new bride. Mrs. Sterling, I ran some preliminary blood work when you arrived. Dr. Collins continued, pulling up results on her tablet. I found something concerning that I need to discuss with you. Amanda's heart rate spiked, causing the monitors to beep faster. What kind of concerning? You have significant levels of benzodiazepines in your system, specifically lorazepam, which is an anti-anxiety medication. The concentration suggests regular administration over several weeks, possibly months. The words hit Amanda like ice water. That's impossible. I haven't been taking any anxiety medication. I mean, Richard has suggested recently that I might benefit from seeing a psychiatrist about what he calls my increasing stress and forgetfulness, but I never actually got a prescription. Dr. Collins made notes on her tablet, her expression growing more serious. Mrs. Sterling, these levels indicate systematic, regular dosing. Someone would need to be giving this medication to you consistently, most likely by crushing tablets and mixing them into food or beverages. The morning routine flashed through Amanda's mind. Richard bringing her prenatal vitamins personally every day for the past 4 months, along with fresh orange juice. His sudden insistence on preparing her breakfast himself, claiming he wanted to make sure she was getting proper nutrition. The way he watched to make sure she took every vitamin, every sip of juice. He's been drugging me, Amanda whispered, the reality hitting her like a physical blow. My own husband has been systematically drugging me while telling everyone I'm developing mental health problems. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The wedding was beautiful, even with the unexpected drama. Can't wait for our honeymoon in Costa Rica. Next week, love and excitement. Mrs. Brianna Sterling. Amanda stared at the message, noting how the sender had already changed her name to Sterling. They had planned this down to the smallest detail, including what to do about the inconvenient pregnant wife. Dr. Collins observed Amanda's reaction to the text message. Mrs. Sterling, is there someone you trust who could come be with you right now? A family member or close friend? Kate, Amanda said immediately. Kate Morrison. She's been my best friend since college. She's also a divorce attorney. As Dr. Collins stepped out to give Amanda privacy for her phone call, Amanda stared at the hospital ceiling and tried to process the magnitude of what was happening. For months, she had been blaming pregnancy hormones for her confusion and memory problems. She had accepted Richard's gentle suggestions that she was becoming irrational, that her perceptions weren't reliable. But she hadn't been losing her mind. She had been systematically poisoned by the man she trusted most in the world, the father of her unborn child, while he planned a secret wedding to a woman young enough to be his daughter. The fog that had been clouding her thinking for months was already beginning to lift, revealing a mental clarity that was both liberating and terrifying. Because if Richard had been drugging her to make her appear mentally unstable, the question wasn't just why he was doing it, the question was what else he was planning to do. Kate Morrison burst through the hospital room door 45 minutes later, her red hair disheveled from the drive up from New York City and her usually pristine business attire wrinkled with urgency. At 42, Kate had built a reputation as one of Manhattan's most ruthless divorce attorneys, but right now she looked like a worried friend rather than a legal shark. "Amanda, honey, what the hell is going on?" Kate demanded, pulling up a chair beside the hospital bed. "You call me crying about Richard having a secret wedding and being drugged, and I thought you were having some kind of breakdown, but now I see your texts and I'm ready to destroy this son of a—" "Kate, I need your help." Amanda interrupted, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "I think Richard has been systematically drugging me while planning to divorce me and take everything. The wedding I saw today wasn't some spur-of-the-moment affair. This was planned." Kate opened her leather briefcase and pulled out a legal pad, switching immediately into attorney mode. "Tell me everything from the beginning. Every detail, every strange interaction, every time something felt off, but you dismissed it." For the next hour, Amanda recounted the past year of her marriage, Richard's increasing control over her activities, always framed as concern for her health during pregnancy, his suggestions that she was becoming forgetful and irrational, the way he had taken over all their financial decisions, claiming she shouldn't worry about money matters while expecting. "And this morning," Amanda continued, "I specifically remember him giving me my prenatal vitamins with orange juice, just like he's done every day for months. He always stays to make sure I take them all." Kate was taking rapid notes, her legal mind already organizing a strategy. "Amanda, this isn't just adultery or even simple divorce fraud. If Richard has been systematically drugging you, we're talking about felony assault charges. And if he's been manipulating your mental state to gain control of assets." Kate's phone rang, and she answered with her usual professional authority. "Morrison Law, Kate Morrison speaking." Amanda watched her best friend's expression change from confidence to confusion to outright shock as the caller delivered information that made Kate's face go pale. "That was my private investigator," Kate said slowly after ending the call. "I called him on the drive up here to start running background checks on Richard and Brianna. Amanda, there's something you need to know about your husband's business." "What kind of something?" Kate pulled up financial databases on her laptop, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she accessed resources that weren't available to the general public. Sterling Tech Solutions filed for bankruptcy protection 14 months ago. Richard's startup isn't successful. Amanda, it's completely insolvent. The room seemed to tilt sideways as Amanda tried to process this information. "That's impossible. Richard just signed a major contract with Goldman Sachs. He's been talking about expanding internationally." According to these records, Sterling Tech Solutions owes creditors over $3.7 million and has assets worth approximately $48,000. Kate said, turning her laptop screen so Amanda could see the bankruptcy filing. "Your husband's company has been operating at a massive loss for over 2 years. Amanda felt physically sick as the implications began to dawn on her. "Kate, if Richard's company is bankrupt, then how have we been maintaining our lifestyle? The house in Greenwich, the cars, the country club memberships." Kate's expression grew grimmer as she pulled up additional financial records. "Amanda, When did you inherit money from your parents' estate? 3 years ago, after Mom died. It was about $2 million total. Richard handled all the investment decisions because he said he understood the market better than I did. Kate was quiet for several long moments as she traced financial records through various databases. When she finally looked up, her expression was a mixture of fury and professional determination. Amanda, your inheritance is gone. All of it. Richard has been systematically transferring money from your joint accounts to accounts controlled by him and Brianna Hayes. We're not talking about adultery or even simple marriage fraud. Your husband has been running a comprehensive financial scam while drugging you to make you appear mentally incompetent. The magnitude of the betrayal hit Amanda like a physical blow. Not only had Richard been poisoning her and planning a secret wedding, but he had been stealing her inheritance while his own business collapsed around him. There's more, Kate continued, pulling up insurance documents. Richard increased your life insurance policy to $5 million 6 months ago. He also applied for a policy on your unborn child. Amanda's blood ran cold. Kate, what exactly do you think Richard was planning to do to me? Before Kate could answer, Amanda's phone rang with Richard's ringtone. Both women stared at the device for several rings before Amanda finally answered. Amanda, sweetheart, how are you feeling? Richard's voice carried his usual tone of concerned authority. I'm so sorry I couldn't stay at the hospital earlier. There was a crisis at the office that required immediate attention. What kind of crisis, Richard? Amanda asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Nothing for you to worry about, honey. Just some contract complications that needed to be resolved quickly. Listen, I spoke with Dr. Martinez about your episode today. He thinks we should seriously consider having you evaluated by a psychiatric specialist. These confusion and memory issues are getting worse. Amanda caught Kate's eye and saw her friend making frantic notes. This wasn't a concerned husband worried about his wife's health. This was a criminal covering his tracks and building a case for Amanda's mental incompetence. I think that's a wonderful idea, Richard, Amanda said, surprising both herself and Kate with her calm response. In fact, I think we should discuss all of our options. When can you come to the hospital so we can talk? I'll be there first thing in the morning, sweetheart. Try to get some rest. After Richard hung up, Amanda looked at Kate with a determination that surprised them both. We're going to destroy him, aren't we? Amanda, we're going to do more than destroy him. We're going to make sure he goes to prison for what he's done to you. For the first time in months, Amanda felt like she was thinking clearly enough to fight back. But she had no idea that Richard's plan was far more dangerous than either she or Kate had imagined. At 8 o'clock the next morning, Richard Sterling walked into Hartford Hospital carrying coffee and wearing the concerned expression that had become his signature look over the past several months. He had spent the night at his and Brianna's secret apartment, planning his next moves in the careful, methodical way that had made him successful at manipulating people throughout his adult life. Amanda watched him enter her hospital room, noting details she had somehow missed during 15 years of marriage. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes, the calculating pause before every seemingly spontaneous gesture of affection, the subtle but persistent way he positioned himself as the authority in every conversation. Good morning, sweetheart, Richard said, settling into the chair beside her bed. You look much better today. How are you feeling? Confused, actually, Amanda replied, which was partially true. She was confused about how she had failed to recognize his manipulation for so long. Dr. Collins says they found medication in my blood that I haven't been prescribed. She thinks someone has been giving me anti-anxiety drugs without my knowledge. Richard's expression shifted to exactly the right combination of concern and gentle skepticism. Amanda, honey, that doesn't make any sense. Who would do something like that? And more importantly, why would they need to? You've been experiencing increasing anxiety and memory problems for months. Maybe you've been taking medication and forgetting about it due to the pregnancy stress. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that Amanda almost doubted herself for a moment. Almost. But the benzodiazepines were clearing from her system completely, and her mind felt sharper than it had in almost a year. The doctor says the levels in my blood indicate systematic dosing over several months, Amanda pressed. Someone would have to be crushing pills and putting them in my food or drinks on a regular basis. Richard leaned forward with the patient expression he used when he thought Amanda was being particularly irrational. Sweetheart, I think the pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid. You're looking for conspiracies where there are just medical explanations. This is exactly the kind of thinking that's been worrying me about your mental state. Amanda's phone, which was lying on the bedside table, suddenly lit up with an incoming call. The name Brianna Hayes flashed on the screen, and both Amanda and Richard stared at it for a moment. Aren't you going to answer your assistant's call? Amanda asked sweetly. Richard's composure cracked for just an instant before he recovered. She's probably calling about scheduling issues. Nothing that can't wait until I get to the office. But Amanda had seen the flash of panic in his eyes, the momentary loss of control that revealed just how carefully orchestrated his concerned husband performance really was. Actually, Richard, I'd like to ask you about something else, Amanda said, pulling out her phone and opening the text message she had received the night before. I got an interesting message yesterday from someone claiming to be Mrs. Brianna Sterling. Any idea who might be sending me texts about wedding ceremonies and honeymoons in Costa Rica? The color drained from Richard's face as he read the message on Amanda's phone. For several seconds, the mask of concerned authority completely disappeared, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Amanda, I have no idea who sent that message, he said finally, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. It's probably some kind of spam or wrong number situation. You know how these things happen with phones. Do I, Richard? Because lately I haven't been sure about anything. My memory has been so unreliable, and you've been so concerned about my mental state. But you know what's interesting? Ever since I stopped taking those prenatal vitamins you've been bringing me every morning, my thinking has become remarkably clear. Richard stood up abruptly, his careful composure finally cracking under pressure. Amanda, you're obviously having some kind of paranoid episode brought on by pregnancy stress. I think it would be best if Dr. Martinez saw you immediately for a psychiatric evaluation. I think that's an excellent idea. Amanda agreed, smiling for the first time in months. In fact, I think a lot of medical professionals should examine my situation very carefully. Richard backed toward the door, his charm completely abandoned in favor of damage control. I'll call Dr. Martinez right away. Just try to rest and don't make any important decisions while you're in this state of mind. After Richard left, Amanda immediately called Kate, who had spent the night gathering additional evidence about Richard's financial crimes and his relationship with Brianna Hayes. Kate, I think I just backed Richard into a corner, Amanda said. He's going to try to have me committed for psychiatric evaluation. Actually, Amanda, that might be exactly what we need, Kate replied, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who had just figured out how to turn an opponent's strategy against them. If Richard tries to have you involuntarily committed, he'll have to provide detailed documentation about your supposed mental health issues. And when we prove that your confusion was caused by systematic drugging rather than psychiatric problems, He'll have provided us with evidence of his own criminal intent. Amanda felt a surge of hope for the first time in months. Maybe Richard's manipulation and control could actually be turned into the evidence that would destroy him. But she had no idea that Richard was already 3 steps ahead of her, and that his plan for dealing with inconvenient wives was far more sophisticated and dangerous than she had imagined. 3 hours after Richard left the hospital, 2 police officers appeared at Amanda's room with official paperwork and expressions of professional reluctance. Officer Jennifer Martinez, a woman in her 30s with kind but tired eyes, spoke in the gentle tone reserved for dealing with psychiatric emergencies. "Mrs. Sterling, we have a court order for emergency mental health evaluation," she said, showing Amanda the official documents. "Your husband has petitioned for involuntary psychiatric hold based on concerns about your safety and the safety of your unborn child." Amanda stared at the legal papers, her heart racing as she realized how thoroughly Richard had outmaneuvered her. The petition contained detailed descriptions of her increasingly erratic behavior, paranoid delusions about being poisoned, and false accusations against her husband's business associates. "This says I've been making threats against myself and my baby," Amanda said, reading Richard's sworn statement. "It says I've been refusing medical care and creating elaborate conspiracy theories about systematic abuse." Kate, who had arrived at the hospital an hour earlier, reviewed the court documents with the practiced eye of someone who specialized in family law emergencies. "Amanda, this is incredibly sophisticated legal manipulation. Richard has been building this case for months." Officer Martinez consulted her notes about the emergency petition. "Mrs. Sterling, the court order is based on statements from your husband, your obstetrician, and a psychiatric evaluation that was conducted last week without your knowledge." "What psychiatric evaluation?" Amanda demanded. "I never met with any psychiatrist." Kate pulled out her laptop and began researching the names mentioned in the court documents. "Amanda, according to this petition, Dr. Robert Chen evaluated you on March 15th and determined that you were experiencing postpartum psychosis and posed a potential danger to yourself and your unborn child." "Kate, I was never evaluated by any Dr. Chen. I don't even know who that is. And March 15th was the day Richard took me to that medical appointment he said was just routine pregnancy monitoring." The pieces of Richard's plan were beginning to fall into place with terrifying clarity. The appointment Amanda thought was routine prenatal care had actually been a psychiatric evaluation designed to support Richard's case for having her involuntarily committed. "Mrs. Sterling," Officer Martinez said gently, "I need you to come with us for your own safety and for the safety of your child. The evaluation is just temporary, usually 72 hours, to make sure you're not in crisis." Amanda looked at Kate with growing panic. "He's going to have me locked up in a psychiatric hospital while he disappears with Brianna and whatever money he hasn't already stolen." Kate was typing rapidly on her laptop, pulling up additional legal resources and contacting colleagues who specialized in emergency psychiatric law. "Amanda, don't panic. We can fight this. But you need to stay calm and rational during the evaluation to prove that Richard's claims are false." As the police officers prepared to escort Amanda from the hospital to the psychiatric facility, her phone rang with another call from an unknown number. This time, when she answered, she heard Richard's voice, but he wasn't talking to her. He was having a conversation with someone else, apparently unaware that his phone had accidentally called her. The commitment paperwork went through perfectly. Richard was saying to whoever was with him, "Dr. Chen's evaluation from last month gives us everything we need to keep her institutionalized for at least 6 months, maybe longer if we can prove she's a danger to the baby." Amanda quickly put the phone on speaker so Kate and the police officers could hear Richard's conversation. "What about the money?" a female voice asked. Amanda recognized Brianna's distinctive California accent. The Costa Rica accounts are ready, and the life insurance policy will pay out once we can document that Amanda's psychiatric condition led to complications during childbirth. The whole thing will look like a tragic case of untreated mental illness. Amanda felt ice water running through her veins as she realized the full scope of Richard's plan. He wasn't just trying to steal her money and disappear with his new wife. He was planning to have her permanently institutionalized, take custody of her child, and collect $5 million in life insurance after arranging for something to happen to her during delivery. Officer Martinez stopped the transport process immediately and called for backup. "Mrs. Sterling, this changes everything. We need to contact the FBI about possible conspiracy and fraud charges." Kate was already calling federal authorities and recording Richard's accidental confession on her phone. "Amanda, Richard just provided us with evidence of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, kidnapping, and potentially attempted murder." But even as Amanda felt a surge of hope that Richard's own arrogance might save her, she realized that he would discover his mistake within minutes. And a man desperate enough to plan her death wouldn't hesitate to accelerate his timeline if he realized his plan was falling apart. The real question was whether law enforcement could move fast enough to stop him before he decided that a dead wife was easier to manage than an institutionalized one. FBI agent Michael Torres received Kate Morrison's emergency call at 11:47 a.m. while reviewing financial fraud cases in his downtown Hartford office. A 15-year veteran of white-collar crime investigation, Torres had developed an instinct for cases that were about to explode into life-threatening situations. "Agent Torres, this is Kate Morrison, attorney for Amanda Sterling," Kate said, speaking rapidly into her phone while Amanda was being processed at the psychiatric facility. "We have recorded evidence of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, systematic drugging, and potential attempted murder. I need federal intervention immediately." Torres was already reaching for his emergency response protocols. "Mrs. Morrison, send me everything you have. Audio files, financial records, medical documentation. I can have a federal task force assembled within 2 hours." But 2 hours might be too late. Kate had traced Richard's location through his credit card activity, and he was currently at a private airfield outside Hartford where a chartered plane was being prepared for departure to Costa Rica. Meanwhile, Amanda sat in a sterile evaluation room at Riverside Psychiatric Hospital, trying to convince Dr. Patricia Williams that she was not experiencing psychotic delusions, despite the compelling evidence that Richard had manufactured over several months. "Mrs. Sterling, your husband has provided extensive documentation about your deteriorating mental state," Dr. Williams said, reviewing a thick file of medical records. "According to these reports, you've been experiencing paranoid thoughts, memory loss, and increasingly erratic behavior since becoming pregnant." "Dr. Williams, I was being systematically drugged," Amanda said, her voice steady despite her frustration. "The blood work from Hartford Hospital proves that I had benzodiazepines in my system. Someone was putting anti-anxiety medication in my food without my knowledge." Dr. Williams made notes on her evaluation form, but Amanda could see skepticism in her expression. The psychiatric hold paperwork was convincing, especially since Richard had been building his case for months with carefully documented medical appointments and psychiatric consultations. "Mrs. Sterling, paranoid delusions about being poisoned are actually quite common in cases of postpartum psychosis," Dr. Williams explained patiently. "The fact that you believe your husband is involved in an elaborate conspiracy suggests that your condition may be more serious than initially diagnosed." Amanda realized with growing despair that Richard's manipulation was so sophisticated that even mental health professionals were unable to distinguish between genuine psychiatric symptoms and systematically induced confusion caused by drugs and gaslighting. Her phone, which she had been allowed to keep during the initial evaluation, buzzed with a text message from Richard. Amanda, I'm sorry it had to come to this, but you weren't giving me any choice. By the time you read this, Brianna and I will be starting our new life together. Don't worry about the baby. We'll take good care of him or her. The casual cruelty of the message was breathtaking. Richard was essentially announcing that he planned to take custody of Amanda's child while she was institutionalized, and that he considered this a reasonable solution to the inconvenience of having a wife who had discovered his crimes. Amanda immediately called Kate, who was coordinating with FBI agent Torres to track Richard's movements and freeze his financial assets before he could disappear permanently. Kate, Richard just texted me saying he's leaving the country with Brianna and planning to take custody of my baby, Amanda said, reading the message aloud. Amanda, Agent Torres has federal warrants being prepared for Richard's arrest on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and systematic poisoning. Kate replied, but we need to locate him before he gets on that plane to Costa Rica. Dr. Williams, who had been listening to Amanda's phone conversation, finally began to understand that perhaps Amanda's claims about systematic abuse weren't paranoid delusions after all. Mrs. Sterling, can you tell me more about the systematic drugging you mentioned, Dr. Williams asked, her professional skepticism giving way to genuine concern. For the next 20 minutes, Amanda provided a detailed timeline of Richard's manipulation, his control over her daily routine, and his systematic administration of medication disguised as prenatal vitamins. She also played portions of the recorded conversation where Richard discussed his plan to keep her institutionalized while collecting life insurance money. Dr. Williams made rapid notes and immediately contacted her supervisor about releasing Amanda from psychiatric hold. Mrs. Sterling, based on this evidence, I believe you've been the victim of systematic abuse rather than experiencing psychiatric symptoms. We're going to discharge you immediately so you can assist law enforcement. But as Amanda was preparing to leave Riverside Psychiatric Hospital to meet with FBI agents, her phone rang with a call that made her blood run cold. Amanda, darling. Richard's voice was smooth and confident, with the tone of someone who believed he had already won. I just wanted to let you know that the plane to Costa Rica has been delayed for a few hours due to weather conditions, so I have some time to tie up loose ends here in Connecticut. What kind of loose ends, Richard? Well, for one thing, I realized that leaving you alive in a psychiatric hospital creates certain legal complications for gaining permanent custody of our child. It would be much simpler if you had a tragic accident during your psychiatric crisis. Amanda's heart stopped as she realized that Richard was no longer content to steal her money and disappear. He had decided that murder was a more elegant solution to the problem of an inconvenient wife who knew too much about his crimes. The race against time had just become a matter of life and death. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you ignored every red flag, every instinct telling you something was wrong? Amanda Sterling had, and now that trust was literally killing her. At 3:15 p.m., Amanda sat in FBI agent Torres's car outside the Hartford Federal Building, wearing a wire and preparing to meet her husband at their Greenwich home for what she believed might be the last conversation of her life. The plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. Get Richard to confess to his crimes while federal agents recorded everything from nearby surveillance vehicles. Mrs. Sterling, if at any point you feel unsafe, just say the word butterfly and we'll move in immediately, Agent Torres said, adjusting the recording equipment concealed in Amanda's jacket. Remember, your safety is more important than getting additional evidence. Amanda nodded, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. 7 months pregnant and wired for sound to catch her own husband confessing to conspiracy and attempted murder. Not exactly how she had imagined her second trimester would go. Kate squeezed Amanda's hand supportively. You don't have to do this. We have enough evidence from the recorded phone call to arrest Richard on federal charges. But do we have enough to convict him? Amanda asked. Richard is smart and manipulative. He'll claim the phone call was taken out of context, or that he was just venting frustration. I need to get him to admit what he's been doing and why. The drive to Greenwich took 25 minutes, during which Amanda reviewed everything she knew about Richard's plan and tried to prepare mentally for confronting the man who had systematically destroyed her sense of reality while planning to kill her. Richard's silver Mercedes was in the circular driveway when Amanda arrived at their colonial-style home on Round Hill Road. The house looked exactly as it had when she left for what she thought was a charity gala the previous day. But everything felt different now that she understood Richard's true nature. He opened the front door before she could use her key, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that gave him the appearance of a suburban husband relaxing on a weekend afternoon. The casual clothing somehow made his calculated cruelty even more disturbing. Amanda, sweetheart, I'm so glad you decided to come home, Richard said, his voice carrying the same concerned authority he had been using for months. We need to talk about what's best for you and the baby. Amanda stepped into the marble foyer of the home they had shared for 8 years, noting details she had somehow missed during all that time. Family photographs where Richard's smile looked slightly forced, expensive artwork that had been purchased with her inheritance money, the illusion of success and happiness built on systematic theft and manipulation. Richard, I need you to tell me the truth about what's been happening, Amanda said, settling into the living room where they had shared thousands of conversations during their marriage. The doctors found medication in my blood that I never knowingly took. Someone has been drugging me. Richard sat across from her in his favorite leather chair, adopting the patient expression he used when he thought Amanda was being particularly unreasonable. Amanda, honey, I think the pregnancy stress has made you paranoid about perfectly normal medical treatment. Dr. Martinez prescribed anxiety medication months ago to help with your increasing worry and mood swings. The gaslighting was so smooth and practiced that Amanda almost doubted herself despite everything she had learned. Almost. But the wire recording every word gave her strength to push forward. Richard, I never met with Dr. Martinez about anxiety medication. And the levels in my blood indicate systematic administration over months, not prescribed therapeutic doses. Sweetheart, you've been having significant memory problems lately, Richard said, his voice taking on the patronizing tone that Amanda now recognized as psychological manipulation. You probably don't remember our discussions about medication because the pregnancy has affected your cognitive function. Amanda leaned forward, looking directly into Richard's eyes. Like I don't remember you having a secret wedding ceremony to Brianna Hayes while I thought I was attending a charity gala. The mask slipped. For just a moment, Richard's careful composure cracked, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. Then he smiled, but it wasn't the charming smile that had once made Amanda feel cherished. This was the smile of a predator who realized his prey was more aware than expected. Amanda, I think you're having a complete psychological breakdown, Richard said, standing up and walking toward the kitchen. Maybe we should call Dr. Williams about increasing your psychiatric medication. Amanda followed him, her heart racing as she realized that Richard was moving toward the knife block on the granite countertop. The federal agents were positioned outside, but they might not be able to reach her in time if Richard decided that an immediate solution was preferable to continued manipulation. Richard, I know about the bankruptcy. I know about the stolen inheritance money. I know about the life insurance policy and the plan to have me permanently institutionalized, Amanda said, her voice steady despite her terror. Richard turned around with a carving knife in his hand, his face completely devoid of the charm and concern that had characterized his public persona. "Amanda, you always were too smart for your own good. I tried to handle this situation gently, but you've made that impossible. By figuring out that you've been systematically poisoning me while stealing my money and planning to kill me." Richard stepped closer, the knife held casually but threateningly. "I wasn't planning to kill you, Amanda. I was planning to have you die tragically during childbirth due to complications related to your untreated mental illness. Much more poetic. Don't you think?" Amanda's phone was recording everything, and she prayed that the federal agents outside could hear what was happening. "So you could collect $5 million in life insurance while taking custody of my child." "Our child," Richard corrected, his voice taking on the tone of someone discussing a business transaction. "And yes, the insurance money would provide excellent financial security for starting fresh in Costa Rica with Brianna." Amanda backed toward the living room, trying to maintain distance while keeping Richard talking. "How long have you been planning this? Richard, how long have you been systematically destroying my life while pretending to love me?" "About 18 months, Richard said, following her with the knife still in his hand. "When Sterling Tech started failing and I realized I needed a way to access your inheritance without you asking too many questions about my business problems. So you decided to make me appear mentally ill? I decided to solve multiple problems with one elegant solution." Richard replied. "Your inheritance would cover my debts, the life insurance would provide additional capital, and Brianna would give me the kind of wife I actually deserved, instead of a neurotic woman who questioned every business decision I made." Amanda reached into her pocket and said clearly, "Butterfly. I said butterfly. Richard." The front door exploded inward as federal agents swarmed into the house with weapons drawn. Richard dropped the knife and raised his hands, but his expression remained coldly satisfied rather than surprised. "Richard Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, wire fraud, and systematic poisoning," Agent Torres announced, applying handcuffs with practiced efficiency. But as Richard was being led away, he turned to Amanda with a smile that chilled her blood. "Amanda, darling, you might want to check on your friend Kate. I had to tie up all the loose ends, and she knew too much about my financial activities. Every woman knows the terror of realizing that someone you trusted completely has been systematically destroying your life while you slept beside them every night." Amanda's blood turned to ice as Richard's words sank in. While she had been focused on gathering evidence and staying alive, Richard had been targeting the people who were helping her. Kate Morrison, her best friend since college, the divorce attorney who had dropped everything to help Amanda fight back. "Agent Torres, we need to check on Kate Morrison immediately," Amanda said, her voice tight with panic. "Richard just implied that he's done something to her." Agent Torres was already coordinating with his team through his radio. "All units, we need a wellness check on Kate Morrison. Last known location was her hotel room at the Hartford Marriott." The drive to downtown Hartford took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Amanda sat in the passenger seat of Agent Torres's vehicle, trying to call Kate's cell phone repeatedly and getting no answer. Kate always answered her phone. Always. The Hartford Marriott was a modern high-rise hotel in the business district where Kate had been staying while coordinating Amanda's legal case. Agent Torres and 2 other federal agents accompanied Amanda to the 8th floor, their hands resting on their weapons as they approached Kate's room. "Ms. Morrison, this is FBI Agent Torres," he called, knocking firmly on the hotel room door. "We need you to respond if you're able." Silence. The hotel security manager opened the door with a master key, and Amanda's heart stopped. Kate was lying unconscious on the hotel room floor, her red hair spread around her pale face, her laptop open beside her, showing financial records that detailed Richard's crimes. "She's alive, but barely," the paramedic announced after checking Kate's vital signs. "Looks like systematic poisoning, similar to what you described about Mrs. Sterling. We need to get her to Hartford Hospital immediately." As Kate was rushed to the emergency room, Amanda realized that Richard's plan had been even more sophisticated than she had imagined. He hadn't just been systematically destroying her life. He had been prepared to eliminate anyone who might expose his crimes or help his victims fight back. Dr. Collins met them at the hospital with grim news. "Kate Morrison has been poisoned with the same benzodiazepines we found in Amanda's system, but in much higher concentrations. Whoever did this was trying to kill her, not just incapacitate her." Amanda sat beside Kate's hospital bed, holding her best friend's hand while machines monitored her vital signs. Kate had risked her life to help Amanda escape from Richard's manipulation, and now she was fighting for her life because of that choice. "Kate, I'm so sorry," Amanda whispered. "You saved my life, and I almost got you killed." Agent Torres appeared in the hospital room doorway with additional evidence that painted an even more disturbing picture of Richard's criminal activities. "Mrs. Sterling, we found Kate's investigative files in her hotel room. Richard didn't just target her because she was helping you. He targeted her because she had discovered something that would destroy him completely." "What kind of something?" Kate traced Richard's financial crimes back 7 years. Sterling Tech Solutions was never a legitimate business. It was always a front for money laundering and investment fraud. Richard has been systematically defrauding investors and business partners for most of your marriage. Amanda stared at the evidence spread across Kate's hospital bed table. Bank records showing systematic theft from client accounts, investment documents revealing fake returns and fabricated business contracts. Richard hadn't just stolen Amanda's inheritance. He had been operating a comprehensive criminal enterprise that had victimized dozens of people over multiple years. How many people did he hurt? Agent Torres. Preliminary investigation suggests approximately 47 victims who lost a combined total of $12.3 million to Richard's various schemes. Amanda felt physically sick as she realized that her husband of 15 years had been a career criminal who had seen their marriage as nothing more than cover for his illegal activities and access to her family's money. Kate stirred in the hospital bed, her eyes fluttering open as the medications began clearing from her system. "Amanda," she whispered weakly. "Did we get him?" "We got him. Kate, Richard is in federal custody facing multiple felony charges." Kate managed a weak smile. "Good. Because I found something else about your charming husband that's going to make sure he never sees the outside of a prison cell again." Agent Torres leaned forward with professional interest. "What kind of something, Miss Morrison?" Kate's voice was barely audible, but her words carried the weight of someone who had uncovered evidence of systematic evil. Richard Sterling isn't his real name. His actual name is Robert Chambers, and he's wanted by federal authorities in California and Florida for identical crimes: marriage fraud, systematic poisoning of wives, insurance fraud, and in one case, suspected murder. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Amanda hadn't just married a financial criminal, she had married a serial killer who specialized in systematically destroying the lives of women who trusted him. "How many wives?" Amanda asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "3 previous marriages, all ending with the wife's death or disappearance under suspicious circumstances," Kate whispered. "You weren't his first victim, Amanda. But if we hadn't stopped him, you might have been his last." 6 months later, Amanda Sterling sat in the federal courthouse in Hartford, Connecticut, watching her former husband being sentenced for crimes that spanned multiple states and nearly 2 decades. Richard Sterling, whose real name was Robert Chambers, stood before Judge Patricia Williams wearing an orange jumpsuit and the defeated expression of someone whose elaborate criminal empire had finally collapsed. Mr. Chambers, you have systematically destroyed the lives of multiple women who trusted you with their love, their financial security, and their safety, Judge Williams said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute moral authority. Your crimes represent not just financial fraud, but psychological torture of the most calculated and cruel nature. Amanda held her 3-month-old daughter, Isabella Kate Sterling, in her arms as she watched the man who had nearly killed them both receive a sentence of life in prison without possibility of parole. Isabella, named for her grandmother's strength and Kate's courage, slept peacefully through the proceedings, completely unaware that her father was a serial killer. Kate, who had made a complete recovery from Richard's poisoning attempt, sat beside Amanda, providing the emotional support that had saved both their lives. The months of investigation and legal proceedings had revealed the full scope of Richard's crimes and brought closure to families across multiple states who had lost loved ones to his manipulations. The defendant's systematic pattern of targeting vulnerable women, gaining their trust through false romantic relationships, and then systematically poisoning them while stealing their assets represents some of the most calculated criminal behavior this court has encountered, Judge Williams continued. Agent Torres, who had spent 6 months building the comprehensive federal case against Richard, testified about the evidence that had been gathered through Amanda's courageous decision to confront her abuser while wearing a wire. Mrs. Sterling's willingness to risk her life to gather evidence not only saved her own life and the life of her unborn child, but also prevented Richard Chambers from continuing a pattern of criminal behavior that had already claimed multiple victims. Agent Torres told the court, "The greatest strength isn't avoiding pain, but transforming it into purpose." Amanda had learned that surviving systematic abuse wasn't just about escaping, but about ensuring that other women wouldn't face the same nightmare. After the sentencing, Amanda and Kate walked out of the federal courthouse into bright September sunlight, carrying Isabella and a sense of closure that had taken months of legal proceedings to achieve. "How do you feel?" Kate asked as they settled into the car for the drive back to Amanda's new home in coastal Connecticut. "Free," Amanda replied, adjusting Isabella's blanket and marveling at how much her life had changed since that terrifying day when she collapsed at Richard's secret wedding. "For the first time in years, maybe decades, I feel completely free." The insurance settlement and recovery of stolen assets had left Amanda financially secure, but more importantly, the experience had given her a sense of personal strength that no amount of money could provide. She had not only survived systematic abuse, but had fought back effectively enough to ensure that her abuser would never harm another woman. "What are your plans now?" Kate asked as they drove through the Connecticut countryside toward Amanda's new life. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation," Amanda said, watching the landscape pass by the car window. "Something to help women recognize the signs of systematic financial and psychological abuse before it escalates to life-threatening situations." Kate smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had watched her best friend transform from victim to survivor to advocate. "The Isabella Foundation." "The Isabella Foundation." Amanda agreed, looking down at her daughter who would grow up knowing that her mother had found the courage to fight back against evil and win. 1 year later, Amanda Sterling stood in the sunny conference room of the Isabella Foundation headquarters in downtown Hartford, addressing a group of women who had traveled from across New England to attend the Foundation's first annual conference on recognizing and escaping systematic abuse. "My name is Amanda Sterling. And 2 years ago, I was being systematically poisoned by my husband while he planned to have me killed for insurance money. Amanda told the audience of survivors, advocates, and legal professionals. I'm standing here today because I learned something that I want to share with every woman in this room. Isabella, now 15 months old and walking with the determined confidence that seemed to be her signature trait, played quietly in a corner of the conference room under Kate's watchful supervision. Kate had left her Manhattan law practice to serve as the foundation's legal director and had found more professional satisfaction helping abuse survivors than she had ever experienced representing corporate clients. The most important lesson I learned is that systematic abuse thrives on isolation and self-doubt, Amanda continued. Abusers are experts at making their victims question their own perceptions, their own memories, their own sanity. But when women support women, when we share our experiences and validate each other's reality, systematic abuse loses its power. Dr. Sarah Collins, who now served as the foundation's medical director, had developed protocols that were being implemented in hospitals across Connecticut to help healthcare providers recognize the signs of systematic poisoning and other forms of medical manipulation used by abusers. The Isabella Foundation has helped over 200 women escape from financially and psychologically abusive relationships in our first year of operation. Dr. Collins announced to enthusiastic applause from the conference audience. Agent Torres, who had become a close friend and occasional consultant to the foundation, provided updates about the ongoing investigation into Richard's crimes and the recovery of assets for his various victims across multiple states. Robert Chambers, also known as Richard Sterling, is currently serving life in prison without parole for crimes that affected 73 victims over an 18-year period, Agent Torres reported. The total amount of stolen money and fraudulent insurance claims exceeded $21 million, most of which has been recovered and returned to victims and their families. As the conference concluded and the participants prepared to return to their home states, Amanda reflected on the extraordinary transformation her life had undergone since that terrifying day when she collapsed at Richard's secret wedding ceremony. She had gone from being a systematically abused victim who doubted her own sanity to being the director of a foundation that was changing how society understood and responded to psychological manipulation and financial abuse. Isabella would grow up in a world where her mother's courage had created resources and legal protections that hadn't existed during Amanda's ordeal. "Mommy," Isabella said, toddling over to Amanda with her arms outstretched for a hug. Amanda picked up her daughter and looked out the conference room windows at the Hartford skyline, thinking about all the women who were currently trapped in situations similar to what she had experienced. The work of helping them find their strength and escape their abusers would continue for years, probably decades. But Amanda had learned something profound through her experience with Richard's systematic abuse. The worst betrayal, the most devastating trauma, could be transformed into the most meaningful purpose when approached with courage, determination, and the support of other women who refuse to let systematic abuse continue unchallenged. "What do you say we go home and plan tomorrow's adventures?" "Isabella," Amanda said, gathering her daughter and her purse as Kate finished organizing the conference materials. Home was a restored colonial house on 2 acres of countryside outside Hartford, where Amanda had created the kind of authentic, peaceful life that had been impossible during her years of systematic manipulation. No more walking on eggshells, no more questioning her own perceptions, no more living in fear of a husband who saw her as an obstacle rather than a partner. Isabella would grow up watching her mother choose courage over comfort, purpose over security, and authentic relationships over convenient ones. She would learn that women could fight back against systematic abuse and win, that strength came from supporting other women, and that even the most devastating trauma could become the foundation for the most meaningful life. As they drove through the Connecticut countryside toward home, Amanda reflected on a phrase that had become her personal motto since surviving Richard's attempt to destroy her. The best revenge against systematic abuse isn't just surviving it. The best revenge is transforming it into something that helps other women survive it too. The nightmare was over. The real life, the authentic life, the life built on Amanda's own terms and dedicated to protecting other women, was just beginning, and it was going to be extraordinary.